If you're a gardener and you regularly cut your grass and bag it up, but then put it on the curb to be thrown away, well, maybe it's time to rethink that practice. Join me as I show you a number of great ways to use grass clippings to benefit your garden. Hi, I'm Gardener Scott, and I love using grass clippings in my garden. I recognize them as one of the best free resources that I can use to benefit my plants and improve my soil. By looking at this nice, rich green color, I can tell that these clippings are loaded with nitrogen. And our plants need nitrogen, and that nitrogen can make our soil living and full of nutrients. So why would I throw this away? I want to use it. Right off the bat, I do suggest that because of the nutrients that are in this nice fresh grass, I suggest that you leave as many grass clippings on your lawn as possible. If you have a mulching mower blade, use it so that you can chop some of these leaves into small pieces. And those pieces will fall down onto your lawn, rest on the soil, decompose, and add nutrients back to the soil that your grass is growing in. It can reduce the amount of fertilizers you need when you leave some of the grass clippings on your lawn. But I also recognize that most people see this as a chore and don't mow as often as they should. So what they're left with are longer clippings. And if you leave these long leaves of grass on your lawn, they'll clump up, they'll smother the grass underneath, and it can actually cause some damage. So that's the point, that you usually bag them or rake them up, and then you have a decision to make. Do you use them in your garden, or do you toss them? I've got some great ideas of how you can use them in your garden. The first thing to consider is adding the grass clippings to your compost pile. Because they're so packed with nitrogen, by just adding some of these clippings to your compost pile and then turning these clippings into the pile, you're adding a quick, easy boost of nitrogen. So if your compost is decomposing pretty slowly, if the heat of the pile is staying low and you're not sure what to do, well, take some grass clippings, add a bunch of them, and then turn them in. The key is to get that grass into the pile. If you just lay it on top, you really don't get much of the benefit. And this will dry and mat and may actually keep some of the oxygen and water from getting into the pile. But by taking all this beautiful nitrogen and adding it to a pile that might not have enough nitrogen, which is why it's too cool and not decomposing, you might be able to really accelerate the decomposition and have compost much faster than you expect. I use a lot of wood chip mulch in my garden around my raspberries and my fruit trees because I think everything should be mulched. And while wood chips are great, they take a long time to decompose and add some nutrients to the soil. Well, kind of like the compost pile, I can use fresh grass as an additional layer of mulch on my wood chips. While they're green, and as I water, and as it rains, some of the nutrients from this green grass are going to flow down through the wood chips into the soil. It's very similar to something that some gardeners recommend, which is to make a cut grass tea, where you take your fresh grass clippings, soak them in a bucket of water, and then you use that water when it comes time to water your plants. Well, my suggestion is instead sprinkle these grass clippings all around your plants, and then you're not really diluting it. The issue that I have with a grass tea is that you're diluting all of these nutrients into a pail of water. Why not just go ahead and get the benefits of the mulch, and as the water flows past these green clippings, you'll have a less diluted amount of nutrients reach the soil. The benefits of grass clippings extend beyond just the fresh green cut clippings. Most of what I use in the garden are dried clippings. So when I get a bag, I'll leave it open to the sun, occasionally fluff it up, and allow the green grass to start drying. I have some very young seedlings just beginning to emerge in this bed right here. And it's starting to get hot and very dry in my garden, which means I want to mulch as soon as possible to help hold some of that moisture in the soil and avoid the soil getting too hot. Well, by using dried grass clippings, I can sprinkle a very light layer on top of these seedlings to help protect the soil and protect the seedlings along the way. The green grass clippings are pretty heavy and enough to smother these young seedlings. But the light grass really doesn't weigh down on these seedlings at all. They can continue to grow. And in the process, I'm protecting the soil. So the next time I water, this dried grass will become part of the mulch on this bed. In beds where the plants are bigger, I'll either use a combination of green and brown clippings or just the dried clippings. When I have the fresh clippings, I'll go ahead and sprinkle just a very light layer of these first. And then I'll come back and put some dried clippings on top of the fresh. Or to save time, I'll just go ahead and add some of the fresh clippings to my dried clippings, mix it all up, and then apply the green and the brown together. Now, why don't I do all green clippings to mulch these plants? Well, as you might see in a bag, the clippings will clump in time. And so these clippings have been sitting in the bag and they're starting to become a thick mass. And as this dries out, it can actually interfere with the oxygen and the water transport from the air into the soil. Have you ever mown your grass and the lawnmower was starting to clog up, so you turned it off and turned it upside down and you found something like this stuck to the bottom of your lawnmower? If you don't clean your mower often, not only do you find this stuck on the bottom, but it becomes very dense and hard to the point that you have to pry it off with a screwdriver. I don't want this thick mat resting on my soil. Instead, I want a lighter blend of mulch around my plants. I like to match my mulch to my plants. So that's why the very small seedlings get a very light layer of the dried grass. And the bigger plants get that mix of the green and dried grass. And for the bigger plants, I want a thicker mulch. I save a lot of leaves in autumn. And I crush them up, leave them in bags through the winter. And then one of the things I'll do is mix the leaves with the grass. This now becomes even better as a mulch on these bigger plants. The grass fills the space in between the leaves. And so when I spread it around these bigger plants, it tends to stay in place better. I did a test a number of years ago where I mulched one bed with dried grass, another bed with just crushed leaves, and then a third bed with this blend of crushed leaves and grass. And what I found in my very windy environment is that the dried grass blew away in high winds. The dried leaves also tended to shift or blow away in the high winds. But this blend of the grass and the leaves together tended to stay in place pretty well, especially when it was wet. So if I knew the high winds were coming, I just watered my mulch and I didn't have to worry about it blowing away. I do the same thing in the areas of my garden where I'm using straw as the primary mulch. I'll go ahead and sprinkle some of the grass, green grass, so that I can get that little bit of nutrient boost because the straw really isn't adding any nutrients. By mixing together the green grass and the dry straw, I avoid the issue of clumping. And it also helps ensure that the straw doesn't blow away. And as you might have guessed, I do the same thing with the crushed leaves and grass mixture on top of the straw for the best results. Grass is also a great mulch to use in containers. You can use the grass in individual pots, or you could use it in grow bags and any other container like these where I'm growing my potatoes right now. Many gardeners forget about mulching in their containers, but the containers are drying out faster than just about any other garden bed you have, and this light grass is enough to reduce the evaporation of the soil in your bags. One of the main reasons why I like to use grass clippings as a mulch is because they break down so quickly. So over the course of the growing season, they're going to release some of the nutrients into the soil, but at the end of the season, when I begin to amend my beds, well, I don't have to worry about raking off any of this mulch. I can just turn it into the soil or add compost on top of it, and these grass clippings will begin to decompose in the soil. In fact, in autumn, I often take fresh grass clippings from that last bit of mowing and add them directly to the soil so they can break down and release the nutrients over the winter and early spring. Now, it is important to say that you should know the source of your grass clippings. I do not recommend using the clippings that have been treated with an herbicide because you might be transferring that herbicide into your vegetable garden. Some fertilizer on the grass is okay, but stay away from anything that's going to kill the plants in your lawn because it'll probably kill the plants in your garden as well. Also, I get a lot of questions about, won't I be introducing weeds to my beds if I use the grass clippings? Won't new grass grow in those beds? Well, that's only if you wait so long to cut your grass that the seed heads are starting to develop on your lawn. During normal mowing, you're just cutting down the leaves, and it's just the leaves of the grass that we're using as a mulch. If you cut before the seeds develop, well then no, there's no way for the grass to grow into a new lawn in the middle of your garden bed. Do be aware that there are some grasses, Bermuda grass for instance, that if you cut it and get some of the roots in that cutting, that's possible. But stay away from that. Just cut the tips of the grass on a regular basis, and that's what you use in your garden. I have a lot more information on mulches and amending the beds, and you can watch some of that in these videos next. I'm Gardener Scott. Enjoy gardening.